Welcome to the Elokus podcast, and this is class number 21 in the discourse Naso, Rosh, which is the fourth discourse in the overall book of Bishasha Ekdimu 5672. We are holding in chapter 15. This is the third class in chapter 15. So, based on what we learned in the last two classes, that the root, we were talking that in the in the light, there is also a little bit of already the subtleties of definition, the beginning of the differentiation of 10 spheros. And yesterday we understood that that is the opinion of the Holy Arizal, unlike the Ramak, Ramosha Kerdavero, who his understanding is that the lights are free from even the tiniest bit of any type of definitions or even on the subtlest of levels. They're utterly pure. Even when they go into the vessels, they remain completely pure. But the Arizal pins already the spheres onto the lights. And yesterday we said something gewaldig at the end. That what really this does is that according to the Arizal, what that makes is that the creations have relevance to God even in when Hashem is utterly beyond the Kalim. Because even in the Ein Sof itself, we traced it all the way back into the Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum. That in the lower level of Ein Sof, we discussed there's two levels of Ein Sof, obviously. It's all Ein Sof that in general we're going to see soon, that everything that's before the Tzimtzum on a very general level is all called Atzmos. It's all called God's very self. But yet within that, we have to understand there's a difference between the Etzem, the essence, and the Giloi, and the revelation, which is the Hispashtos, the revelation of the essence. And in the revelation of the essence, we discussed, there's two levels. There is the revelation of the essence to himself, when he reveals himself just because he's revealing, not because there's no target audience, there's nothing there, it's not intended to anybody. And over there, the oil is without any narrowness, nothing. There's nothing defining it whatsoever. It's even beyond the level of infinite spheros attributes. It's just simple with utter simplicity. And then there is the next level of the Ein Sof, when the Ein Sof is already revealing himself with the intention of him being revealed to someone. Over there is where 10 spheros, that's where Eser spheros agnuzos, that's where the 10 hidden spheros could already be. There is already a statement of 10 hidden spheres, Eser spheros agnuzos, on this level. And what we're saying over here is that would mean that in the Ein Sof we have relevance. And that we matter on that level. Unlike from the Ramak, where we only begin to matter, we have no relevance whatsoever in Ein Sof. Only when God infuses himself into Kalim, and from Kalim, that's when we can start having somewhat of a significance. So there's a gewaldige chiddush in the teaching of the Ari. The Arizal's way of look, which is where Hasidus follows, is that it raises us up to a relationship with God we play a much greater role than from the more Ramak's system of Kabbalah, where we're far more distant, and God is very much untouchable, and therefore very, very, very much removed from everything, very much like philosophy, like the Aristo type of understanding, like the great philosophers like Rambam. It makes God very distant, cold, and removed from everything. You know, you can watch on YouTube, you can see there's big fights and arguments between rabbis. And the Hasidic rabbis are those that are more, they make God so much more human, closer to us, that God can be happy and God can be sad and God can experience things, as opposed to those who want to keep God simple and cold and unaffected and so on and so forth. And both have origins in Torah thought. Just need to understand where the origins are. Here we get to understand where Hasidism, Baal Shem Tovism, and so on and so forth, the root in the Arizal, where the Arizal pinpoints already the concept of spheros already in the Or, and the Or is one with him. It's his light. It's the Or Ein Sof that's one with the essence, which makes the essence already, so to speak, be in connection to us, which makes us so much more impactful and the bond so much deeper. And that's a lot to celebrate, but that's for another time. Now that we've in not to lose sight of what we're saying, is that we're trying to trace where the oiros of Atzilus begin to get their definitions. And we said that the oiros of Atzilus are a product of the kav. They come from the kav. From the line, what's the line? The thread. The thread is the emanation of Orein Sof after the tzimtzum, after the contraction that blocked all the light. Now, this kav, this light, if we trace it back before the tzimtzum, it's in the Orein Sof. Right, so it was, as we say, it comes from the Orein Sof. So it's of the Orein Sof. But in the Orein Sof itself, we are pinning it to a level of the Orein Sof in which we can say there is Eses Spheres Agnuzais, there is 10 hidden Spheres in the Orein Sof, as opposed to the higher level of the Orein Sof where we don't have any Spheres at all. Unlike, and this is according to the Arizal. So according to the Arizal, the Eses Spheres Agnuzais, the hidden 10 Spheres, are a root of the Kav. However, according to the Ramak, who keeps the lights, and therefore he has to keep the kav, the light, and all of this very, very clean, very neat, very uncolored, very untainted. And therefore, according to the Ramak, the oiros don't have any definitions whatsoever. So the Esespheres Agnuzos, which is mentioned in the early Kabbalistic writings, must be related to the source of Kalim and not to the oiros, because the lights are completely free from that. That's a little review from where we were holding, and now we're going to continue further. So, based on this idea, what's this idea? That the root of the kav, before the tzimtzum, in the oirein saif, is on a level where there is this hidden, concealed state of somewhat spheres, somewhat element of spheres, of attributes, which means definitions and attributes, although obviously it's on the most abstract, gazillion abstractions, but yet something is there. With that, we'll based on this, he's going to answer a really powerful question that he has on the Zohar. So let's take a look. And then get a little Kabbalistic over here, like the book does. But like this is an extra Kabbalistic piece, but don't get scared. We'll make it through. It's not such a hard piece. It's just some of the Kabbalah over here might be a little challenging. So let's do it slowly. It's based on this we can answer what seems to be not understood. The Bezohar, that in the book of the Holy Zohar, Ube Idra, which again from Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, a foundation book of Kabbalah. And Idra is a piece of the Zohar that was said by Rav Shimon Bar Yochai to a select group of students. He had them in a circle. It was an incredible download of the deepest secrets. So the Zohar says, in Zohar in general, and particularly in the Idra, it seems to imply over there, Sha'atik, the level called Atik, which Atik generally is the innermost of the crown, or generally sometimes referred to as Atika Kadisha, the holy ancient one. The level of Atik, Hum Mamish Mahusei Vatzmuso. From the Zohar it implies that Atik is God himself. It's the substance of God himself. That's how the Zohar refers to Atika Kadisha as, so to speak, the Godhead. Hashem himself, the head, the source of everything. Imken Yuksha, the question over here is, Madua Arizal, when you learn the Arizal's Kabbalah, now the Arizal is coming around about, about 1,000 years after the Zohar. Okay, comes the Arizal, maybe a little more, 1,200 years after the Zohar. And what does he say? Shayash kama b'chines lamar lama-atik. In the Kabbalistic writings of the Ari, we find out that Atik Yomin, Ancient of Days, there are many levels beyond that. More than that, the whole Atik Yomin takes place after the Tzimtzum and after the Makom Pani, after the empty space, after the Kav. The Kav produces, is the source of Atik Yomin. And the Kav is only a narrow little light of Orein Self. So hold it. If the Kav produces and brings about Atik, Atika Kadisha, that level called Atik, Ancient of Days, how is that referred to by the Zohar as God himself. That doesn't make any sense. Not only that, not only is the Kav a narrow thread that is the pipeline pumping the light and the life force into Atik, which obviously then can't be God himself because God is not receiving a life force from anywhere. But even more than that, even in that thread, even on that pipe, the Arizal speaks of branches that are higher than Atik. Atik, usually when we say Atik, we mean the level of Atik of Atzilus. Okay, we have the world of Atzilus, which has the world of emanation with the 10 sefirot are, and above that is the crown. In the crown, there's 2 levels of crown generally. The external level of the crown called Erech Anpin, the long face. And then higher than that, the innermost of the crown called Atika Kadisha, the ancient one. Above that are worlds. There are worlds beyond that. What are those worlds? There's a world called Akudim. There's a world called Nikudim. Nikudim are points we once discussed as the point, the 10 spheres, each where they're not a configuration, each one comes out as a point. Generally, sometimes it's referred to as Olam HaTohu, the world of chaos. And beyond the world of Nikudim is a world of Akudim, where all the spheres, we spoke about it earlier, all the spheres are in one vessel. They all share one vessel. And beyond them is a level of Adam Kadmon, which is primordial man. And they're all being fed by the Kav, and they're all post Tzimtzum. So obviously they're not God himself. And then for sure, Atika Kadisha, which is lower down in the pipe, Atika Kadisha is definitely not than the essence of Hashem himself. So that seems to be problematic, right? That's his question. How can the Arizal say there are many levels that are beyond Atik? Adam Kadmon, like Adam Kadmon, which is higher than Atik. Va'akudim and Akudim. Shem Lamayla Ma'atik Tatzilus, which are above the Atika of the Atik of Atzilus. And even though we can say Sheyesh L'Taritzos, we can answer. You can find a good answer. What can we say? That when the Zohar speaks of Atik, the Zohar doesn't mean the Atik of Atzilus. Because the Atik of Atzilus, yes, the Atik of Atzilus, the level of the innermost of the crown of Atzilus, that's called Atik, is true, it's lower. It's after a series of worlds. But we're talking about Adam Kadmon itself has its own Atik. Above Adam Kadmon, which is a much higher and vast world above Atzilus, has its own Keter, has its own crown, its own, and in that Keser of Adam Kadmon is an Atik Yomen. So maybe when the Zohar says that Atika, the Atik, is Atzmos, is referring to God himself, it's not the Atik of Atzilus, but rather it's the Atika on a much higher level, the Atika of Adam Kadmon. That would perhaps would be the answer. And then we would resolve it. We can answer that from another teaching of the Holy Ari. Because the Arizal says that there is an Atik and level of Atik, of Ancient of Days, that's above Adam Kadmon, primordial man. Like it says in Eitz Chaim, portal number 8, Perek chapter 5. What's the words over there? Higher than the Gulgolas. Gulgolas means the skull, which is generally referring to the Keter element. Higher than the Gulgolas of delay of whom? Delay of his. Who's him over here? He's referring to Adam Kadmon, primordial man. Yesh kedugmas Atik Tatzilus. There is something similar to the, like on a much lower level, the Atik, the ancient one of Atzilus. This is a much, much higher level, but there is something like that. Some level beyond that, which is the above the Gulgolas, which means Gulgolas is the external part of the crown, the Erech Anpin element, and this is the Atika Kadisha, which is, yeah, and maybe that's what the Zohar is referring to. But he's still not satisfied, because even that is coming after the Kav. Because the whole Adam Kadmon comes from the Kav, which the Kav comes after the Tzimtzum. How can you say on anything that's after the Tzimtzum that's God himself? Gam Atik, the Adam Kadmon, he asks, but even the Atik of Adam Kadmon, hu nimshach ma'akav, is drawn from the Kav. La'acharat Tzimtzum, comes after the Tzimtzum, because the entire Adam Kadmon and all of its properties and everything that belongs to it, so to speak, is a post-Tzimtzum phenomenon. And after the empty space. So God had already hidden all of his light. And from the midst of the emptiness, from the black hole, he's reemerging. So that can't, you can't identify any level after that and say that's Hashem himself. How can we say that this is referring to Atzmus himself, to God himself? The Gam Kasha, another question. Okay, let's say we're going to say that Atika Kadisha is God himself, but then we're going to have another problem. We're going to run into another problem from the very Zohar itself. The Be'idra Amru, that in the Idra, again referring to that portion of Zohar called the Idra, it says, Ba'atik Yoimin, when it refers to Atik Yoimin, it says over there, it mentions that in Atik Yoimin, Ancient of Days, there is Galgalta, that Atik Yoimin himself has a skull, Einen, he has eyes, Ummoicha, there's a level called brain, which means we are bringing about various differentiatable. Obviously, we understand that it's not physical and not spiritual. It's beyond a million gazillion, without an end, beyond of what kind of abstraction we're dealing with. But after everything is said and done, it does mention certain features. And the question over there is, how in the world then can you say that that's Atzmus, that's God himself, which definitely doesn't have any features? Shekol zamoid al esespheres. This all is indicative of 10 sfirot. Eyes is Chachma, the eyes are related to refer to Chachma. Galgalta is Keser, so these are all sfirot, they're attributes. Ubatz Musay Mamish, and in God's very essence, Ein Shayach Shum Sfira. Over there can't be any sfira, any attribute. So how will we reconcile it? Well, the Fila now, but based on what we said earlier, Yituritz, all of this is going to be answered. How are we going to answer it? So let me tell you already what the answer is, and we're going to know. Where he's going to explain is as follows. Now that we've established, according to the Arizal's understanding, that what? In chapter 12, 13, that the lights also have already the sphera element, the attributes, the nuances of the spheres are there in the lights. And we were tracing that going back into the Kav, that the Kav itself lends itself to 10 lights, not more and not less. And the reason why the Kav lends itself to reveal itself as 10 lights is because even in the source of the Kav, in the Orein Sof itself, there is Esespheres Hagnuzos, which is related to the Orein Sof itself. Yes, the nether part of the Orein Sof, but yet the Orein Sof. Now we'll understand, because anything above the Tzimtzum, beyond the Tzimtzum, in general, we can refer to that as Atzmos, because God is for himself. Before the Tzimtzum, it's not possible to have any worlds. So that's why, before the Tzimtzum, everything is just God. It's Hashem. We can refer to that as Atzmos. It's Or Ein Sof. There's absolutely limitless light. And we'll also be able to answer why, and we're soon going to see that when the Zohar refers to as Atik, it's referring to not the atiks that happen after the tzimtzum. It's referring to the pre-tzimtzum atik yomen. And what's that? He's going to show us soon. But the pre-tzimtzum atik yomen is the source of the kav. What's the source of the kav? The 10 spheres hagnuzais, the 10 hidden spheres. And they are part of the Orein Sof. So if that's the case, we're now then going to understand how the Zohar can say that Atik is Atzmos. And at this, meaning it's that Atik is God himself, because it's referring to Orein. So we're not dealing with post-Tzimtzum. After Tzimtzum, for sure, anything coming from the Kav, the Zohar would not say is referring to God himself. It's certain revelations, certain emanations, certain lights of Hashem. But before the Tzimtzum, over there we can say, in general, it's Orein Sof, and therefore it can be referred to as Atzmos. And that's what the Zohar is saying, that in Atika, that Atik is Atzmos. And being that over there, in this element of Orein Sof, which we're going to need a lot of learning about, there is the concept of Esses Spheres Agnuza, is the concealed 10 spheres. That means we're elevating the concept of spheres deeper and deeper, even into the Orein Sof. Well, then understand, now it will make sense why the Zohar says that in Atik there is eyes, Galgalta, and all these things, which are 10 spheres, because even in the Orein Sof itself, we can differentiate spheres. albeit it's the nether part of the Or Ein Sof, the lower part of the Or Ein Sof, as we shall see. It's the revelation of Or Ein Sof that is intended eventually after the Tzimtzum to be a revelation to somebody. But it's a revelation taking place within God. Again, everything that's happening before the Tzimtzum is all within Hashem. Completely with Him, not outside of Him. Oh, you need a black hole to be outside of Him. There's no black hole of it. There's no absence. It's only Him. It's all in Him. But within Him, there's a revelation in Him for Himself, and there's a revelation in Him for the world, and the revelation in Him for the world is still Him, and there is 10 spheres, and that's the Atika, that's the Atik, that's the grandfather of all Atiks. But that's the original Atik. Because Atik, what does Atik mean? Atik means removed from any definition, from emotions. Atik comes from the word, it's removed. But the mere fact that you're saying something is removed means that there's a relationship to it. Because if it wouldn't be any relationship, then why do you have to say it's removed? When something is a source for something else, and later there will be definitions and there will be limitations, you say this, on this level, there are no limitations. But if there were no connection at all, in Atzmos, we don't have to say that Atzmos is Atik. He's removed from any spheres because he has no relationship at all. His existence is completely different. But since the Or Ein Sof, where the Essa Spherois Agnuzais are, which are the root of the Kav, is the light within God that He is revealing that is still infinite. But since He's revealing it with the intentions of it being a light to illuminate the worlds, that's the intention of it, although it's in Him. And for that reason, it already begins to narrow into the concept of 10 spheres. So, for that reason, we, on the one hand, say on it, it's netak. It's completely removed. You wouldn't see in it any sphera. But since it's the source of eventually being spheres, we have to say that He is removed. In other words, if He would be completely removed, He wouldn't even have to say that He's removed. The fact that we have to emphasize that He's removed, that it's really still Ein Sof, is because really He's a source. That's the concept of Atik. So Atik really is the beginning of existence as it's still embedded in God. And that's the ultimate Atik. And that's the Atik that the Zohar is talking about. That's the idea that he is explaining over here. And if you don't understand, welcome to the club. Deep stuff. But let's go. But that's, I think it pretty much is understandable. It's just a little bit to get comfortable with the names over here. Well, Afia now, and based on all of this, Yetuditz, all this will be answered. That even, this is what we've just accomplished. What we've just accomplished is, in these chapters, is that the Or is not completely removed from sphirot, from attributes, not complete. And even in the Kav, there is already a leaning to 10 spheres. And even in the source of the Kav and the Or Ein Sof, there is already spheres. So based on that, the Hainu Kamoishu Kalu Ba'Or Ein Sof, when the Kav is still included in the Or Ein Sof, Shalifnei at Tzimtzum, before the Tzimtzum, Shayach Esa Spheres Agnuzos, it's possible to speak of 10 hidden spheres. And therefore, number one, we will then understand why it says that in Atika Kadisha, which is referring to this level, there is eyes and Gilgalta, the Zohar can refer to it, and at the same time it's referring to Atzmos, and that it says that Atik is Atzmos, because on this level the lights are still inside Atzmos. Nothing went out of Him yet. Everything is inside of Him. It's the revelation of Him that's still inside of Him, but it's already intended to eventually be the source. In Chassidus, sometimes it's referred to Or Hashayach La'olamos. It's the light that has a shaykhus to the world that when it's still a Ma'alam and Olamos. It's completely above all the worlds, but it has a shaykhus to the worlds. It has already a relationship to the worlds. Okay, now he's going to explain why this level, Esa Spheres Agnuzos, why we will refer to it as Atik. And that's what the Zohar means when the Zohar speaks about Atik. That's what he's going to explain now. Basically, we explained this already, but now let's read it inside as he's going to break it down. Number one, when we say the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais, the light, the 10 spheres that are hidden, again, you have to remember, we're dealing with a light that's still inside the Ein Sof. So the light is infinite. However, if this light was to come forth, it will eventually shine in 10 spheres. Because we're saying the 10 spheres are already there in potential. And from there comes the Kav. So, these 10 spheres, what element of this level of light actually flows into the Kav? When the Kav extends itself, when the thread of light after the Tzimtzum, because the difference between the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais and the Kav is the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais are or Ein Sof while it's still in God. It's still in the essence. It's like the light of the sun while it's still in the sun. The Kav is like the ray of the sun that goes out of the sun into the black atmosphere to shine, to line up. So the Kav is already much lower, but it's still coming from the light that was in the sun, but it's much less. So he's going to now explain in what sense is the Kav less. So if the 10 spheres that are hidden in the Kav, that are hidden in the Ein Sof, are 10 spheres starting with Chachma and going all the way down to Malchus, Malchus being the last, because Malchus is always the last. On every level, Malchus is the last. And we know that in each sphera, in each attribute, there's all 10 spheres. So what would be the lowest possible sphera of any level? What would be the lowest? Would be the Malchus of the Malchut. So in the 10 spheres that are hidden, the Chachma of it, or the Keter of it, is the highest. The Malchus of it, it's so hard even to speak of it, what kind of differentiation is there? But if you're going to say there's 10, there's going to have to be a differentiation. And the Malchus is going to be the last. So in the Malchus, and from the Malchus, Malchus itself has a Chachma of the Malchus and Bina of Malchus. So the Malchut of the Malchut of the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais, of the 10 spheres that are hidden, the lowest level, from it emerges the Kav. V'akav yesh loimar, and on the Kav we can say, Shenimshach, that it is drawn, Rak mipchinas Malchus shebe Malchus, the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais, from the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais. That means that the Esa Spheres Hagnuzais are so lofty, and that's why we refer to them as Atik. They're so removed from being a power of the world. They're above the world utterly. It's still in the Ein Sof. But it's a source for the Kav. And the Kav will be the beam of light of the Or Ein Sof that will go out, that will eventually split into 10 spheres, into 10 oiros, into 10 lights. And from this Kav, Nishava Ak, comes into existence Adam Kadmon, which is the first structure of actual spheres, right? The Adam Kadmon. And then further down will come the world of Akudim, and then come the lower and lower. Vihine. Okay, so now we know that the Kav is at the very, very tail end of the 10 spheres that are Genuzais b'Matzila. For that reason, the 10 spheres Hagnuzais are going to be called the Atik, the Atika of Adam Kadmon. In other words, when we said earlier that the Atik of Adam Kadmon, Atika Kaddish of Adam Kadmon, is after the Tzimtzum, now he's saying that's not correct. The real Atik Yomin of Adam Kadmon is before the Tzimtzum. What is the real Atika Kadisha, the real Atik of Adam Kadmon? The real inner crown of the crown of Adam Kadmon is the Esa Spheres. Hagnuzais b'Matzila. And he's going to prove that idea. Adam Kadmon, now he's going to give us a little more Kabbalistic formula over here. Adam Kadmon yesh igulim v'yoshe. In Adam Kadmon there are circles and direct light, which the Kabbalists say shehem nefesh v'ruach, that these are nefesh and ruach. The nefesh is the igulim energy, and the ruach is the yosher energy. Now, it's a little complicated why that is and what that means, but it's not that important for our discussion. We know that in every parts of, in every configuration, in every world, there are 5 powers of energy, 5 souls. There is a guf, there is a body of the world, and there is the soul of it. The soul itself, we know, just like our soul has 5 names. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. So the nefesh is the lowest, and it's related more to the guf. It's the life force of the guf. And he says, it says in Kabbalah that in Adam Kadmon there is Igulim and Yosher, which they represent these 2 powers of the nefesh of Adam Kadmon, the soul, the vivifying soul of Adam Kadmon, and the ruach of Adam Kadmon, which is the Yosher. In this case, comes out that Yosher is higher than Igulim, and I'm not going to go into it right now to explain it because it's not important for us over here. But that's all we know that is mentioned in Adam Kadmon in terms of soul and spirit. The soul and the spirit of Adam Kadmon is the nefesh and ruach, the Igulim and Yosher. The Hiksha b'Sifrei Kabbalah, so in the Kabbalistic writings they ask, Madu alay nisker ba'Adam Kadmon neshama chai yechida. Why is neshama not mentioned? In every level you have nefesh, ruach, neshama chai yechida, the 3 higher levels of life force. How come in Adam Kadmon it's not mentioned? And they answer, and from their answer that they answer, moving it's understood as follows, that there is neshama of Adam Kadmon, there is chai of Adam Kadmon, and then there is yechid of Adam Kadmon. And the way it works is like this. The neshama of Adam Kadmon is, I forgot what he calls it, a ruach dak, a thin, a spirit that is flowing into Adam Kadmon. Again, he doesn't bring it over here because it's not important for our discussion. The chai of Adam Kadmon is the kav, the oir hakav, the light of the kav, is called the chai. The vivifying, the encompassing energy around Adam Kadmon is the chai, is the kav. And the source of the kav, which is where the kav plugs into the Orein Sof, which we discussed earlier, is the Esses Virais Hagnuzais B'Matzilon. That's the Yechida of Adam Kadmon. That is the Yechida of Adam Kadmon. Now we know Yechida is always parallel with Atik Yomin. The level of Yechida is always is the Atik. Comes out that the Esses Virais Hagnuzais, the 10 hidden Spheroids that are Ganus B'Matzilon, they are the Atika of Adam Kadmon. And that's the Atik that the Zohar is speaking about, that says that it's God himself. But at the same time, the Zohar also says that there are 10 spheres, that is eyes and Gilgal, because even there is already Essa spheres. That's the answer that he's giving. Of course, I am jamming it now all together, and I'm really jam-packing it over here. Not me, it's what the Maamor is doing, but I'm trying to crush it all into very quickly. And I want us to read the words, the Yechida the Adam Kadmon. We're going to chew it over a little in the next class. That the Yechida of Adam Kadmon is Inyan Esses Spheres Agnuzais. That's the 10 spheres that are Agnuzais. Kamoisha Klulim Ba'orein Soif, as they are part still of the Orein Soif. The Hakav, and the Kav that comes from it, Zeu Kamoy Chai. That's like the Chai of Adam Kadmon. The lower level of Makif. The Chai that's in Adam Kadmon. Or neshama, or the neshama of Adam Kadmon. Hanimshach mebchenas yechida, that comes from the yechida, le'slabesh teich Adam Kadmon, to becoming clothed in Adam Kadmon. As we know that from neshama, nefesh, and ruach, they go inside, and the chai is an encompassing light, and the essence of it all is the yechida. So the yechida is the source of the kav, which is the yechida hu b'chenas atik. And we also know that yechida is always the level of atik. Comes out that the 10 hidden spheres, that's the atika, the atik level of Adam Kadmon. Where he explains this. And based on this he answers, it implies in the Zohar, the atik that atik is the very substance of God. How does that work? Because the 10 hidden spheres, Shehen Kamoy Atik, which they are the Atik, the Yechida la Adam Kadmon, and the Yechida for the Adam Kadmon, Hareyam Klulim ba'Orein Sof, that's still the Orein Sof when it's still inside God himself, Mamish, Shalamayla Ma Tzimtzum, it's above the Tzimtzum, V'hakav, and the line, and the thread. Ki Hakav Nimshach Rak Mibchinas Malchus the Ein Sof, because the The kav is only coming from the malchus of the malchus, as we said earlier, of the Ein Sof. That's the kav, but it's coming from the Or Ein Sof himself, which is, but the lower element of the Or Ein Sof, where there are 10 spheres. That's why we can refer to it literally as atzmos. But at the same time, we can also mention by it inyan galgalta, einen. We can mention skull and we can mention eyes. Hamoidim al es spheres that are indicative of 10 spheres, because it's the kol, as he says over here, because there is 10 spheres that are ganus in their matzel. The kol zeh shayach b'shayrish makar kav, and all of this is only in the source of the kav. Avo ba'or ein sof, but in the Or Ein Sof shu b'chinas gilui ma'etzem. But the Or Ein Sof, when he's his light that he's shining or for himself, that's about himself, not about to be, it's not shayach to the world, it's not related to the world, it's not meant to the world. Ein shayach sham spherois. Over there we can't speak of any spherois at all. Chulu, and that's ended. I did this a little fast, and even though I pulled an extra few minutes in the class, because we couldn't stop in the middle and start all over again. So I'm just going to do a little explanation on this Be'ez Hashem in the next class, but we don't have to learn it inside anymore because you got the gist of it. And Be'ez Hashem, let us see Mashiach now.